Welcome to another edition of Weather and Climate Chat with Monsoon Mike and Dr. Michael Davis. Dr. Davis, hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Our new day, we're going to start doing these on Monday for various reasons. Basically because my schedule's better on Monday, but also because it probably makes more sense because then we can give you kind of a week ahead and advertise it more than on a weekend where, you won't hear from us again till the following week and things could change quite a bit. So we're doing it for you. That's what we do here. That's what we do. Even though it's secretly for me, we'll say we're doing it for them, right? No. We'll just leave it at that. Anyway, okay. Well, there you have it. So let's backtrack a little bit and talk about the past week and what we went through. We had an interesting last week. I do want to touch a little bit on because you and I had, had a lot of fun and a lot of questions from our friends and colleagues about that crazy. What night was the stormy night? Wednesday night. What happened there? That was pretty wild for a February night.
We had a very intense low pressure system that was sitting over the Great Lakes, and it had a lot of what we term vorticity associated with it. It had a lot of spinning in the atmosphere. There was a presence of what's known as a low-level jet, where the winds were about 70, 80 knots, roughly about 75, 85 miles an hour at the surface, or just a little bit. I'm sorry, not the surface, 1 mile up.
Okay.
And about halfway up the atmosphere, we had winds that were about 150 miles an hour.
Wow.
So we had a lot of movement going on, and we had a lot of moisture being brought up because the winds were out of the south, and that just fed right in front of the cold front that was plowing through. And then we got the squall line that developed, and we had some very intense rainfall. I believe in my backyard, I had 3.2 inches. Mm-hmm. 3.3?
Okay.
It was above 3 inches. I forget the decimal, though.
I must confess, and you can't yell at me too much because you didn't get your weather system up and running in your new house for a while, but I had a little malfunction of sorts at my Monsoon Mike weather station, and let's just say the weather rain gauge was not properly installed. So I don't know how much I got, but I would say it was a healthy amount because there was lots of neighbors that had flooding issues. It was rain was coming down in sheets. I was looking out the back window, and it was like watching the ocean almost with the way the sheets of rain were blowing.
Oh yeah, it looked like pretty much a waterfall just opened up. Did your rain gauge actually stay put, or?
Well, that was part of the issue.
Okay.
I didn't check it too much beforehand. If I would have properly inserted it and installed it ahead of time, but I forgot, and then the wind started blowing, and the next morning it was just laying over.
Because that can happen where instrument failure. For example, when we had that big blizzard just last month.
Oh yeah.
We had the weather spotters at the stations in, I believe it was Reagan,
right,
D.C., that did not find their snowboard.
They couldn't find it
because the snow drifts buried it.
That's classic. So hey, it even happens to the professionals, so I can't be too hard on myself. But yeah, that was crazy. And winds, I would say at least 60, some reports of 70 miles an hour in some areas. Mm-hmm. And we have to do a shout out to our neighbors and friends down in the Lancaster area who had a confirmed tornado.
EF2, I saw.
It was an F2, EF2, which was not bad for this. Well, not good, not bad, depending on what you want to use.
Winds were 120 to 140. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of damage along Route 340 around. I think 12 miles south of Morgantown, I believe, is the general area. So not terribly far from here. We're talking about an hour and 10 minutes south of here. A lot of Amish farms and barns were damaged. But one thing about the Amish and Mennonite people, they bond. I don't know if you heard this story, but this was a fascinating story. As you've probably seen, whenever they have a tragedy of some sort, a storm or a fire, all the family members just bond together. And the National Weather Service, when they went out to investigate the next day, I read this somewhere. I don't know where it was. It could have been on the National Weather Service Facebook, for all you know. That by the time they got there, they were already starting to rebuild. That's how fast they do.
Quick turnaround.
And the National Weather Service is like, wow, I wish they wouldn't have started already because it would have helped us see some damage that you guys already have cleaned up. So props to Amish Mennonite people. They really are quick with bonding together and getting things back going. And from what I hear, most of it's already cleaned up and half rebuilt down there. So that's fantastic. So
yes, very good.
Our thoughts to them as they recover, but no lives lost. I think some animal lives were maybe lost in that one barn that collapsed, but other than that, it was a pretty...
Unfortunately, there were some deaths with the system. I think they were mostly toward Virginia.
Virginia had 3, I believe. Yeah,
I know of at least 2. There probably was a third.
And the day prior, there was some deaths Texas?
I heard like Arkansas, Mississippi,
okay.
Alabama. And
All right, so
they could have been Texas too, because it did start all the way down there.
it was a very just a wide reaching storm system. So definitely, and I messaged you that night as that squall line was coming in, and I said to you, Dr. Davis, I mean, this squall line looks like something you would see in April or May, not February.
Yes, and I think it was like a week or two before that
Yeah.
that we actually had another similar type event come through.
Is this El Nino that this winter turned out so weird like that, or is
the El Nino is starting to fade? I think
Okay.
it's more just on really intense storms brought about by differential in temperature. I'm not going to say
Right.
it's linked to climate change, but we're seeing the potential for that.
And once again, you always have people who get excited and jump on stuff like this, and they were messaging me that night, geez, Monsoon Mike, if we have storms like that in February, does that bode bad for March, April, May, June, which is like real thunderstorm season? Does it or not?
I think it's a little too early to tell on that. I would probably say that you're not going to have a lot in the way of storms until we get more toward when the jet stream is more above us.
Okay.
Probably like March, April-ish. So I don't think we're going to have these large-scale tornado outbreaks
Yeah.
that we're seeing until at least March or April, when we start to get more toward the actual climatological time of year.
Right. And I have to admit that when the Weather Service issued that tornado watch last week, I was a little bit skeptical, because that was the other crazy thing that was happening that day. That afternoon, Philadelphia was 62, and we were still stuck at 46 here. And then, like, what was it, 5 or 6 o'clock, my thermometer shot up like 15 degrees. So,
because of all that really strong warm air
Yeah.
being brought in from the south. And I was telling the students that day that while tornado threat does seem very minimal, there's just so much air moving around in the atmosphere.
Anything could happen.
Just creating that twisting motion, that's all you need, really.
anything could happen. So, yeah, that was a wild day. After that, we had some, I forget how the week wrapped up last week. I think it was a little on the cloudy gray side. It took a while to get rid of all of that junk. But then we had a nice weekend. Saturday was chilly. Yesterday was nice.
Fantastic.
It was taste of spring, low 60s, which actually overperformed a little bit. I think I was forecasting about 60 on my website, and it went to like 63 in many areas.
Yeah, I was thinking 59-ish.
Yeah.
But no, we actually hit 60 in some areas.
Yeah, it was a beautiful day. Now this morning we had some rain and clouds. That was associated with a weak cool front, I believe.
Yeah, weak cold front coming through, but nothing really major. Now we have the more drier air working in for Monday afternoon into Monday night, so we should be okay.
Yeah, as we're looking out the window now, the sun's making its appearance. It's going to get a little windier. Tomorrow looks pretty quiet. Another storm rolling through Wednesday, which maybe as recently as last week, where he's a little bit unsure about what form it's going to take, but definitely an all-rain situation at this point.
Yeah, it looks like it's heading further north.
Yeah, so definitely an all-rain. Not a whole lot of rain, nothing like last week. What are we thinking, like half-inch type range with this particular event?
Yeah, I'd probably say that.
Okay.
At the most.
Okay. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, looks like it's kind of chilly once again.
Yeah, we dropped down to like the upper 30s.
Yeah.
I think mid-30s, around there. A little bit more seasonable for temperature-wise.
It might even be a little bit below, because isn't normal around this time of year, what, like 40s, low 40s, I believe? I have to check on what exactly is normal this time of year.
I believe it's upper 30s.
Still upper 30s? Okay. You might be right. Yeah.
I'm not entirely certain as to the exact number, but
Okay.
I believe it's upper 30s.
Okay. I thought we might
Maybe
be
around 40.
I thought we might be the low 40s, but you're probably right. So,
I think we're a little bit lower just because we haven't really got to the equinox yet.
Okay. Now, one thing
Which, by the way, if I may cut in, tomorrow is the
I was just going to
first day
I was just gonna
of
say-
meteorological spring.
I was just going to say that. The real first day of spring is March 21st, 22nd. I don't know when it is exactly this year. I haven't looked it up, but meteorological seasons are different from the actual astronomical seasons. Meteorological winter is December, January, February.
Yes.
Meteorological spring is March, April, May.
Correct.
Meteorological summer is June, July, August.
Yep.
And then fall is September, October, and November. Why is that?
Those seasons tend to act more like the others, so they go for more similarity. Really, March tends to be more like April and May versus February and January.
So even though it's still a couple weeks till astronomical spring, tomorrow's first day of meteorological spring, so happy
Correct.
spring.
Thank you.
Happy spring. And if it wasn't for this darn leap year, it would be today.
It would be this day, yes.
Just real briefly, because a lot of people ask, I mean, we should all know this, but I guess because it only happens every 4 years, people forget. Why do we have this? I saw you post about it on your Facebook page this morning. Why do we have a leap day?
The Earth's orbit around the sun is 365 days and 6 hours.
Okay.
So every 4 years, 6 times 4 makes 24.
Gotcha.
So you have to add one day. Otherwise, we'd be having Christmas in July or something
Eventually.
like that.
Take a while for it to get to that point, but it would eventually happen. Interesting. Yes. All right. So happy leap day, everybody. Any leap babies out there that are born today, you'll only have a real birthday once every 4 years. You always hear those stories. And
the leapyings, I think. Leaplings or whatever they're called.
And I did hear that Pizza Hut is giving free pizza to any certified leap year baby if you can show up with your ID and it shows.
And in the UK, it is socially acceptable for the woman to
I
ask
heard that
the man.
Too. What's it called? Bachelor's Day or something? Yeah, I heard that.
On leap year.
So all kinds of fun stuff happening on Leap Day. So happy Leap Day and happy meteorological spring tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay, so there you have it, folks. Wild last week. Pretty, quiet this week. We do have some rain coming on Wednesday. Should also just mention there was an off chance of a storm later this week as well, too, to sink in with that cold, which would have been a little nervous, perhaps, with wintry precipitation. But that looks like an out-to-sea event at this point. But
yeah, I'm not putting much stock in it now, but we'll see what happens in a couple of days when the models have a chance to refine themselves.
Sure. All right, so just keep posted on our Facebook pages for updates on that. Okay, Dr. Davis, what is our topic of the week that you want to discuss?
Well, there's several things that we could talk about.
Yeah.
The one that just happened last night was the Oscars and Leonardo DiCaprio winning his Oscar for Best Actor for The Revenant. And he made a shout-out to climate change and climate scientists and how we have to essentially consider climate change in terms of accepted science because we cannot take this planet for granted, as he stated. And it's interesting, too, with that movie, The Revenant, they actually had to relocate to southern Chile because they had to find snow. They originally went to northern Canada, but couldn't find any. So they had to pay $10 million more to move down across the hemisphere to where there was snow.
So there you go. And so reasoning rate. And was that movie, I haven't seen the movie yet, but was that movie dealing with climate change at all, or was that just like a secondary sort of thing?
That was more of a backstory. That's I haven't seen it either. I don't think it pertains to climate change.
I didn't think so. But it still indirectly greatly affected that movie and made them have to pay another $10 million just to get to a spot where you can see some.
Especially if you have a budget and $10 million to float. And then there was a story that was published. I saw it in the Toronto Star the other day that talked about how climate change is weighing on mental stress.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Climate scientists are essentially thinking to themselves, oh my goodness, maybe we're not going to be able to do this.
Wow.
And we've been saying for years that we need to start taking action to combat climate change.
Stop it.
And we're having some sort of pre-traumatic stress disorder.
Wow.
As a result, we just get the sense of potential loss of hope or guilt. Now, I don't know if I suffer from that myself. I still think we got plenty of time, to start taking action.
Right.
But we need to move in a very earnest direction to actually get there.
Right.
Because we're already seeing climate change occurring, and we need to essentially start laying the groundwork and move forward in that direction. Some may think that we need to start acting more aggressively than I do, but I believe that we humans are capable of coming together to prevent this catastrophe from happening.
So you don't think it is too late, but while it's not too late, we still have to move on this now.
Well, we're already talking about irreversible damage being several decades away.
Okay.
Like the 2040, 2050, that time frame. It keeps moving up.
Yeah, it does, unfortunately.
And with carbon dioxide emissions, they typically have a residency time of about 30, 40 years in the atmosphere.
Okay.
So if we were to stop all carbon emissions right now, we'd be looking at about 2045, 2050 before we actually started to cool, which is where the real danger is starting to come in, according to some projections. So we need to start reducing our carbon now in order to meet that deadline. We don't have the 30, 40 years to just keep kicking the can down the road.
And sometimes I think it's also a mental thing because people hear the number 2045, 2050, and that's so far away. But then just think about, compared to, that's what, 30 about 30 years away. 30 years away was the mid 80s, and a lot of people listening right now might be like, mid 80s. I remember that like it was yesterday. So 30 years will go fast.
You go Back to the Future.
I'm doing a little Back to the Future there, just to try to get people. I still remember the mid 80s. That's how scary that is, and it doesn't seem that long. So that's how close this is if we don't act on something soon. So.
Yes, and I think the Paris Climate Agreement is a good step forward, and we need to act on it. But then you get people like the Supreme Court that say, wait, let's hold off on that for now and see what the lower courts say to that. And
then it goes back and forth.
And then we're not going to see maybe any action on that until the next president. And then who knows what that next president is going to want to do.
Right. So there you have it, folks. It's not necessarily a pessimistic situation, but it's not very optimistic either at the same time. We've just really got to keep focused on keep our eyes on the ball and keep progressing forward and contacting our legislators and keeping them on track.
And it's also interesting too, because most of the climate scientists that I talk to, we still have the sense of optimism.
Yeah.
We don't really have this doom and gloom attitude to us. And I sometimes get asked, why are you so optimistic about this?
Right.
I just feel like when all the cards are down the table, I think that we humans will finally realize that we need to take aggressive steps toward this.
Right.
I still find us humans as capable of creating a world that we can live in sustainably and with renewable energy sources that will permit us to be here for a long period of time. And we can essentially make the better judgment based on scientific evidence to support moving forward in the future.
So keeping the hope. That's what I like to see. Very good.
Exactly.
Very good. Yeah, and I know some scientists, like you off the air, we were talking about one gentleman was very pessimistic about it, and he was losing sleep, hasn't slept in 8 days, and all this stuff because he's worried about what the future brings. But I think you're a nice balance between both, between the everything's fine, don't worry about it, and that guy. So you're right down the middle. So
yes,
good stuff.
I would think so.
Okay.
Even keel.
All right, folks. Well, there you have it. Just wrapping up our weather once again. Going to get chilly later this week after some midweek rain. And we will join you again next Monday, which will be spring break in meteorological spring.
Correct.
And so that means the only thing that won't be spring, technically, KU will be spring, meteorological spring, but astronomically we'll be still a week behind after that.
Yeah, it'll come eventually.
All right. We'll see you next week, Dr. Davis.
Yes.